And we're now live on YouTube.
Great, thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. Our Mayor Nancy had to deal with some personal issues, so she won't be here tonight, or maybe she'll be here later. So for now, my name is Jim McMenamin, I'm Deputy Mayor, so I'll be taking over, chairing the meeting. And excuse me if I fumble, but I may or may not. We'll see how it goes. Anyways, I want to let everybody know too that this meeting has already been approved, so we're coming out of close and going right into the open session. And I'll turn this over to Councillor Strachan for our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe, and we honor the historic relationship with the Haudenosaunee and Huron-Wendat people of this land. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship with all Indigenous peoples, and we look forward to continuing this conversation and fostering the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Okay, any disclosure of interest, council colleagues? Seeing none, okay. So Heather, we're going right into presentations then, I'm assuming?
We are, Deputy Mayor. The first presentation will be by Eric Sly, who will present his presentation, followed by the municipality's drainage consulting firm.
Okay, take it away, Mr. Sly.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Good evening. The staff report that I'm presenting is for information purposes and to provide council with an update with respect to the development of resources to implement a tile drainage strategy to manage future tile drainage installation records and to develop a plan to update all municipal drain assessment schedules for consideration during the upcoming 2022 budget deliberations. Next slide, please. In May 2021, Council supported a request to AMAFRA from Howick Township to amend the Agricultural Tile Drainage Installation Act, which would require tile drainage contractors to file farm drainage installation plans with the local municipalities. Currently, the municipality is awaiting the outcome of this request to AMAFRA. In order to implement a tile drainage strategy to manage future tile drainage installations, it is necessary to provide AMAFRA time to consider amendments to the Tile Drainage Installation Act. Next slide, please. Many existing municipal drains within North Grenville have outdated assessment schedules, which are not accounted for during past severances and land divisions. By having an up-to-date assessment schedules, this helps ensure the maintenance costs are distributed appropriately and specific municipal drain works are completed in a timely manner. The Public Works Department has developed 3 options to update municipal drain assessment schedules for consideration. Next slide, please. Option 1 would require hiring an engineering technologist or equivalent qualified position for a 6-month contract. This position would be dedicated to updating all existing municipal drain assessment schedules under the direction of the drainage superintendent. Option 2 would require hiring a qualified drainage engineer to update all existing municipal drain assessment schedules. Or option 3 would include option 1 and relying on a qualified drainage engineer when required during the updating the assessment schedules. It is estimated that the cost for option 1 would be roughly $35,000. The maximum upset limit for option 2 would be approximately $75,000, and option 3 is estimated at $35,000 plus a maximum upset value of $15,000 if these services are required. Based on this, the Public Works Department is recommending that option 3 is considered during the 2022 budget deliberations. Following the end of the contract, the Public Works Department would assess the progress and determine if an extension will be required in the 2023 budget deliberations. Thank you, and this concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the material just presented, understanding that we have Josh Smith from McIntosh Perry here to expand on municipal drains and specifically updating municipal drain assessment schedules. Thank you.
Council colleagues, do you want Mr. Smith to go ahead with his presentation first before we ask questions?
I think that might be to our advantage to get a presentation from Josh Smith at McIntosh Perry before we come back to Eric and ask questions about the recommendation from staff.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Smith, it's up to you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well, first off, for those who do not know me, my name is Joshua Smith. I am a senior project manager with McIntosh Perry, and we are involved heavily in the municipal drain work, working with private landowners, surrounding municipalities, and when time calls for it, the province for municipal drains. Next slide, please. So just to give a brief overview about us and the company and who we are, just to confirm that we do know what we're talking about here. Our professional services that we get involved with are municipal engineering, transportation engineering, environmental, structural, geotechnical, contract administration, land development, and legal surveying. All of these aspects are involved with these municipal drains. The municipal drains themselves are not just ditches. They often involve culverts and road bridges that cross municipal roadways. There's often utility conflicts when you're crossing roadways as well too. And we need to do surveying. So our firm is well versed in this, and then we typically can provide all these services in-house, which makes this extremely valuable to our clients. Specifically, when we are dealing with municipal drains, they can involve many things, including the assessment schedule updates, which I'm here to speak further on, as well as the engineering reports, site investigations, emergency repairs, and performance reviews. I won't touch on those other ones too much. I realize time is of the essence here, essentially, and we're here to talk about assessment schedules. So with that being said, I will say next slide, please. Perfect. So as part of drainage engineering, there's many things that come into play here. It is not just a beautiful straight ditch that you can see on the screen. The assessment schedule updates are one small little portion of it. But one could argue they are a very critical piece, because they are the schedules that tell the municipality what landowners, what property owners are part of the watershed and where their land is directed to and which drain they're a part of. The assessment schedules are very important when it comes time to charging the drain for works completed on it. These municipal drains are townships' responsibility to maintain, and any of those maintenance costs are assessed out to the drain through these schedules. So without the updated schedule, there is no way for the municipality to properly recuperate the money they spend on performing maintenance on these drains, whether that's regular maintenance or repairs. Next slide, please. So municipal drains, you might be thinking, what the heck are these things? What do they do? Where are they? So municipal drains are regulated. It's a regulated ditch in the province in Ontario by the Ontario Drainage Act. They are here to drain water to an approved or sufficient outlet. Approved or sufficient outlets are typically rivers, streams, or lakes, or they can drain into other municipal drains. Where are they? They're generally in low-lying areas and farm fields. They were initially designed for tile drains to provide farmers typically and others in the agriculture community to increase their land value, to obtain better yields, essentially. Nowadays, as we're starting to see more farming be that of subdivision work, we still have to get water away from those subdivisions, and they often flow through subdivisions, through farm fields to these sufficient outlets. So we generally see them all over the map. What they do? Well, pretty simple. They're meant to drain water from the lands to improve the agriculture. We don't want the standing water in farm fields, in subdivisions. So these municipal drains are put in place, and it gives the province and the municipalities the availability to get in there, maintain them, clean them, to ensure that these properties and communities are draining properly. In the municipality of North Grenville itself, there's approximately 30 plus or minus. And so it is a good chunk. It's a fair number to have. And it's important to keep them in good shape, keep them well cataloged, and to ensure that the assessment schedules are kept updated so any work on them can be completed and paid for. Next slide, please. So assessment schedules, the current situation from how we see it with the municipality of North Grenville is it's extremely outdated. Generally, there's been oversight over the past several decades. They should be updated when you can. Ideally, the best time to do this is when there is severancing or land divisions occurring, be that through subdivisions or property owners severancing off lots here and there, whether it be for family and friends on the farm, or if it's just to provide more housing in the municipality for others to come and live. Who completes these assessment schedules? It's a wide range, and I understand from Eric's presentation, that's what he's presenting, those three options forward. It can be a mix, it can be a drainage engineer, could be a consultant, municipalities, drainage superintendents if they had time, could be a combination of that, and regardless, it's usually backed with some technical support, because when you're completing these assessment schedules, there's often some background information, confirming who indeed lives there now, especially if you're playing catch up. So there is a bit of background work that is required. Who would typically pay for an assessment schedule? Would be the severance applicant or the person subdividing the land. Now, that being said, the township moving forward, if they're in a tough spot and they are seeing increased gross in their municipality, which I believe North Grenville is, they could have the option of placing a severance condition for new severances for the applicant to retain a drainage engineer to complete the application. And that's putting the onus then on the applicant, which helps if the municipality is having a hard time catching up with assessment schedules. It can at least provide them better direction moving forward, so they're not falling more behind. Again, if I can backtrack a little bit on what these drains are and the assessment schedules themselves. So the assessment schedules, I spoke to it briefly, they're a general breakdown of a percentage of the property owner's share of the drain. So the municipal drains themselves typically have a watershed boundary to them. And everybody in that watershed boundary, their water runs off and eventually joins in these municipal drains. This is outlined in a document called an engineer's report. So for each of the municipal drains in the municipality, there is a corresponding engineering report that has the original assessment schedule with it and should include any updates as time passes. What people pay to keep their municipal drain updated. For example, if any maintenance was completed on a drain, if a culvert needed repairing or replacing, that was crossing a road, for example, that repair work is charged back to the drain and assessed out to the owners of that drain. The actual percentage, it's a mix of how much land you own, what that land type is, what the use is, etc. And a big difference is between if it's zoned residential versus agriculture. Let's speak a little bit on the consequences now of these assessment schedules and not having them up to date. It's outdated, inaccurate information. And the big problem I've mentioned before is if work needs to be done, for example, if an emergency repair needed to be completed, which the municipality has to get out and fix right away because it's potentially causing damage to their infrastructure, their roadways, or private property, the municipality is paying for that work to be completed. But if the assessment schedules are not updated, the municipality has no way of recuperating money for that. They cannot assess out those charges to the drain because the assessment schedules are outdated. So that typically means a few things. One, the municipality has to pay and not receive money back, which is not an ideal situation. But there's also grant money available. Grant money from OMAFRA, And that grant money can be used to offset the cost of drainage superintendents. It can be used to offset costs of the repair work itself. And it's important, without having the assessment schedules updated, it can leave the municipality liable, depending on the maintenance required. If there is an emergency repair, those can potentially be big dollars that the municipality will just be out of. And if private property damages are encountered because repair has been not able to happen fast enough, well, that private property repair also would then fall on the township to pay for and not be able to recuperate until those assessment schedules are updated. Let's speak to when they could be updated again. So unless the municipality is going by and updating drain after drain after drain, they could be completed when maintenance is being completed on them. So that's very typical. Not every municipality is able to keep up with assessments. Frankly, they do fall behind. But what they try to do is, as maintenance is required, that usually flags the situation of, we need our money back. We don't want to just be out of this. Let's get those assessment schedules updated. And then it's going back over decades and years of records to try to find every single property owner that is now on that drain. So the question of the day here is, what could be completed by North Grenville staff? Eric presented 3 great options, which I'm sure they all seem they're good. They're good options. The important thing is it's flagged now, and hopefully council can start acting on this and put the municipality in a better spot. So should future maintenance work and emergency repairs happen, they'll be able to recuperate that money in a timely manner. Next slide, please. Perfect. So when assessment schedules are updated, that means the township can recuperate that money that they've spent on doing the maintenance and repairs. The picture on the screen that you can see shows a typical municipal drain with a farm field access crossing over a large diameter culvert. This picture, I like it. It's a shallow culvert crossing. It shows the banks could use a little bit of work. You can see vegetation is growing up. The actual width of the channel has crept bigger and bigger and bigger. So a drain like this could benefit from cleaning it out a little bit, brushing up the sides, removing the sediment from the bottom. The issue is, with infrequent inspections and maintenance, the drains do not work as they were intended for. So they're not draining well, which means the farm fields are not draining well because there's no capacity to move the water. So the tile drains are backed up. So the fields are wetter than they could be. And this is a slow problem that gets worse and worse each and every year as the municipal drains fill up, as more tree and brush grow up along the sides and move dirt and the roots start taking up spot. So it's important to complete regular maintenance on these drains. They're typically very low cost, especially when they are assessed out over the entire span of the municipal drain. So these are very low costs that all the contributing property owners will see. And the outcome is a well-maintained drain that can move water, will let crops grow, good yields, and it risks potential damage to properties because the drain is being cared for in a timely manner and it's not letting it grow and cause damage. Who pays for this? Well, the drain pays for this. If the assessment schedules are not updated, you cannot get the money back, so the township is paying for this. So if you have drains where they're grossly overgrown with vegetation, the bottom is built up, it's barely working, you can see sections of moss growing, other plants growing in the middle of the drain, that drain could greatly benefit from some maintenance. Because somewhere upstream of that is a property owner or a farmer who's counting on that drain for their livelihood. And without that operating well, again, that's affecting yields. It's potentially causing damage and flooding and access water on private property. The consequences, of course, of not completing drain maintenance is what I've just been speaking of. Expensive repairs, damage to private and public property, and those low yields. So it's in everybody's best interests to have a well-operated and maintained municipal drain. The updated assessment schedules allow the municipality to recuperate that money and pass that on to everyone sharing the drain. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for your time. I hopefully have shed a little light and have introduced what municipal drains are a little further to everybody. Please, I welcome question and comment, and if I cannot comment on it now, I will certainly get that back to council in a timely manner for you all. I understand this is an issue that you're wishing to deal with sooner rather than later. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Appreciate that. Before we go to questions, I'm going to just bring Eric back for a second here. Eric, you gave us 3 options. So just if you could explain to council just briefly again those options and your rationale for, I believe, the 3rd option you were recommending. So if you could just expand on that for me or for us, that would be great. Thank you. And Councillor Barkley, I'll get you in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Yeah, I broke it down into 3 options. The first one was hiring an engineering technologist, basically under a 6-month contract for the remainder of 2022, under the direction of the drainage superintendent to bring some of the assessment schedules up to gate. Option 2 was to hire a qualified drainage engineer to do those assessment updates. And option 3 would be basically option 1, with relying on a qualified drainage engineer if problems come up with the updating the assessment, and we would rely basically on option 1 and 2 as a combination to use the expertise of the drainage engineer to answer any kind of hard-hitting questions or questions that could not be answered by staff or the drainage superintendent or the engineering technologist. So that's kind of how I broke it down with regards to the rationale behind that.
Okay. And Eric, how are, or Mr. Sly, how are we handling things now, or how just in the recent past?
I'm currently, we are handling it based on maintenance requests, as Josh spoke about it. So when the request for maintenance does come in, that's when we start to look at the assessment schedules for that specific drain. When doing that, that doesn't allow us to react in a very timely manner to the request, because if the schedules or assessment schedules are out to date, then it does take time to update them, and it does take quite a long time, depending on the complexity of the assess. If there is numerous severances, they're all very dependent on the specific drain. It does take time to update those, and then it does. You know, you may lose seasons to do completion of the actual works for the actual maintenance that has been requested. So it is a little bit of a delay, and then that's why we want to try to get back up to par or be ready for maintenance when they are requested from specific landowners.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Lai. Okay, I'll open this up to my council colleagues for questions then. Councillor Barkley, you had a question, or?
Yeah, just a couple of things to clarify for my council colleagues. First of all, Public Works has only been responsible for drains in the last 3 years, but in that time, it's my understanding, Mr. Sly, that we've done maintenance on 3 municipal drains in that period. But previous to Public Works being responsible, there was only 3 drains worked on over the previous 20 years. Have I got that information correct?
The Public Works has been for the last just about 6 years now, and we have done actually 2 maintenance sessions. The previous maintenance, I cannot speak to that right now. I would have to look back, but there has been some over the years, maybe not as many as required, but some drains have never been maintained whatsoever within this township or the municipality. So it's different. In the 2 drains that we did do maintenance on, it did take us a long time to get to the point of actual maintenance, because the drainage assessment schedules were so out of date that we had to spend many months bringing them up to date, and then obviously informing the landowners within that area of providing knowledge to them, to letting them know that they're actually part of a municipal drain. So it did take quite a bit of time to get that update.
So in those cases, because the assessments were out of date, we weren't able to charge any of that work to the landowners who benefited from that drain. Is that correct?
In those instances, we just delayed the process. We actually were able to charge them back, but it was there was some significant delays getting the work done. So maybe it was almost a calendar year that we had to wait to do the actual work. So the work did get done, and it was charged back appropriately. It just took a very long time to get them up to date, and a lot of staff resources and time with the landowners and whatnot. So,
okay, thank you. And Deputy Mayor, I've got other questions and comments, but maybe I'll pause for now and let the rest of my council colleagues make comments or ask questions.
Okay, before I go to Director Dunlop, does council colleagues have any other questions? I have a couple, but Director Dunlop, I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the previous 30 years, there were, just to clarify the question that you asked Mr. Sly, in the previous 30 years, there were, it was my understanding, 2 municipal drains, but we were successful in the last 2 over the last 5 years to update the assessment schedules in an appropriate amount of time. So that is the reason we were able to charge it back. The assessment schedules were updated. We informed and had stakeholder meetings prior to any work being completed. So that's just additional information.
Thank you, Director Dunlop. The question I had then, maybe I need an explanation on a couple of things, but we're talking about the landowners, potentially paying for some of these upgrades and whatnot. Mr. Smith, you mentioned OMAFRA grants that we may miss out, or are we missing out on OMAFRA grants because of delays or a problem with the schedule, or am I missing that?
You're not currently missing out on them for the assessment schedule updates. The grants are available when maintenance work is completed. So Mr. Sly's time when he is combing through the archive records to pull out engineering reports from 1960s and 1970s and trying to find assessment schedules and compile all that and then finally update the assessments. OMAFRA is able to offer grants up to 50% of the drainage superintendent's time. So his time, the drainage superintendent's time, is recuperated costs.
Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming through our staff that we're taking advantage of those. The other question I had, maybe not a question, but and this is to Mr. Sly and to Mr. Smith, but just I'm not or I should say drainage is not my bailiwick like it is for Councillor Barkley. So I wouldn't call me Mr. Drainage, but Kempville's North Grenville is extremely flat, and I'm assuming just the nature of being flat, it's challenging. Your water sits in ditches for a long time, and people may complain that it's sitting there. There's something wrong with the drain, or maybe there's not. We're just happen to be flat. So I kind of got that idea. So if that's the case, when we have challenges like this, what happens, and what's the maybe I got this wrong, but what is the landlord, if there's a landowner that feels that something's not working properly, they contact the municipality, but if engineering was not done properly in the past or something, do they have a recourse to challenge either what the municipality is talking about or conservation or whoever? That's my question.
Eric, did you want to take this one?
I can, yeah. With recourse with regards, landowners can challenge basically the engineer's report. They 100% can, if they don't believe that the information that is presented in the engineer's report and the corresponding assessment schedules and mapping that has been presented to council at the time and adopted through bylaw. If they don't agree with that, they can challenge that, and they can have we can bring in a drainage engineer to open that up and look at that and see if the validity of it, and to see if the merit of the concern is relevant or not. I mean, they can definitely, anybody can challenge the assessment schedules, the actual physical watershed of the drain and whatnot, so that it could be scrutinized for sure. So,
okay. Mr. Sly, if the engineering or the work has been done and years later you discover some issues with that, is there any recourse at that time?
Josh, could you answer that?
Certainly. Yeah. And Deputy Mayor, that's where a lot of the issue comes in, is when appeals start to happen and property owners feel that their share, perhaps they're paying too much for the drain. They might notice that there's been several severances taken off, and they know the assessment schedule is not updated and they would like some relief on that. So that certainly happens. And whenever maintenance does occur, there usually is some property owners that disagree with the maintenance. They feel that it doesn't need to happen. And that's likely perhaps they don't understand the whole process, and they don't understand what the municipal drain is. So there's a lot the municipality can do to educate the taxpayers, to educate them a little further on what these municipal drains are. Because sometimes when there is maintenance on the larger drains, it can be a surprise to these property owners. And if they don't understand the process and they're being fronted a bill for works, certainly you will see appeals 100%. And those appeals go back. It takes a lot of time for the municipality, the drainage superintendent, to pull back the records from the engineering report from usually back in 1960, 1970, and to try to keep track of what's occurred over time, what severances has happened. So it's a lot of legwork for lots of different people. And when appeal does happen, there are certain processes that have to happen. Again, this is the Ontario Drainage Act. So it takes a lot of time, and it can certainly be hectic. But education is often the best course of action, and try to stay ahead of it all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Councillor Barkley, you have a question?
Yes, I got a couple of questions through you, Deputy Mayor, to Josh. But first, I just want to clear up a common misunderstanding. If there's water standing in the ditch, it's doing its job because it allows for transpiration, that's evaporation and percolation down. It doesn't necessarily have to be empty to be a well-working drain. So often residents are concerned about water sitting in the ditch, and that's perfectly normal. For Josh, these are just a couple of questions for clarification for the public and my council colleagues. Is assessments are often triggered by severances, and they're pretty simple to, if the assessment is up to date and there's a severage filed with planning, they can simply notify Public Works, and it's almost a desktop exercise to update the assessment. But it also can be triggered, my understanding, it also can be triggered by a change in land use. So even if there isn't a severance, if the use of that land changes significantly, then that would trigger an assessment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Agricultural land versus residential land is the big difference.
Right.
And that's the issue a lot of municipalities are facing when subdivisions are creeping out further and further. Is there used to be a cornfield, tile drained. Now it is a bunch of houses connected to a municipal drain.
And I think the residents of this, sorry to cut you off, of this community are very familiar with those at farmland being turned into rural subdivisions or urban subdivisions. So even though your report or your PowerPoint was full of beautiful pictures of agriculture, in our case, a lot of our issues with drainage is happening in serviced land or in the case of rural subdivisions, residential property. The other question I had was regarding maintenance. I think I saw inspection frequency yearly or bi-yearly, so 1 year every 2 years. I don't know if that's necessary with all municipal drains. I've heard another frequency of being 5 to 10 years. But so I'd like you to comment on that, you know, the frequency. I guess it depends on the shape of the drain to begin.
It completely depends on the shape. Some drains, again, it's very drain dependent. Some are monstrous with many branches off of them. And so yearly inspections of different branches are great. It really depends on what the township can set up or the municipality can set up as a reasonable schedule for staff and the drainage superintendent to occur. The inspection does not have to be a very time-consuming exercise. It's usually a simple visual walking the drain. If you can get out there in the spring with high waters, that is a great time. Again, summertime, it could be a great time to really see the bottom of a lot of the drains because a fair chunk of them are dried out in the summer months. It's completely dependent on the municipality. The benefit is the more you do, the earlier you can recognize it, but we all have other jobs to do as well too. So you're absolutely right. You know, a lot of them, it's a 5-year, it's a 10-year exercise. That's usually enough time for new trees to grow up and recognize they have to be removed. If culverts are heaving, if all of a sudden there's speed bumps on your road crossings, you know, these are all good things to flag early on, because if culverts are heaving, for example, the drain's not moving water as it intended.
Yeah, I just wanted to draw the distinction between an assessment and an inspection. They sound similar, but the assessment is just what percentage a landowner who's driving benefit from that drain has to pay, right?
Yeah, the assessment schedule, to try to clarify it, it's more, I can use the word a desktop review, essentially. It's who owns the property and the contributing property to the drain, where the inspection is the actual field component of it, where you're visualizing, you're seeing the drain, you're taking depth readings, you're ensuring there's slope, and that it aligns with the original engineer's report.
So in a nutshell, the problem we're faced with 30, give or take a couple of drains, municipal drains, where the assessments haven't been updated, is first of all, if there's maintenance to be done, taxpayers would bear the cost rather than the landowners derive and benefit from that maintenance if they're not updated.
Yes, I don't want to go too far into the subject because I can go off on a bit of a tangent, but there's usually times of the year when you can make grant applications to OMAFRA. And if your assessment schedules are not updated, you're not qualified to make those grant submissions. So it's more money the township or the municipality won't be receiving back. You know, if they complete the assessment schedules after the fact, certainly once they're updated, they can bill it out to the taxpayer, but there's no relief on, say, the superintendent's time. And there is some grants for general maintenance available as well too. So if the assessment schedules are updated, it's generally the drains are being inspected more, they're easier to maintain, and that you can see relief, the municipality can see relief through some grants.
So we have more opportunity to relieve the taxpayer of having to pay and shift that burden for maintenance or repairs to the property owners if we attack this, inventory of outdated assessments.
That's correct. And I'll also throw in the other benefit is there's not the added stress and confusion thrown into the municipal staff that now we need to update these assessment schedules because we just had to do some emergency repairs.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Josh. And thanks for your other consultation earlier on this month with me.
No, much appreciated. The more we can teach about these municipal drains and inform everyone else, it's great. The municipality is well on its way here. Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith and Councillor Barkley. I'm glad that there's people out there who get excited when they see ditches. I see Councillor O'Sullivan has a question. Go ahead.
Okay, through you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you very much. I really appreciate having Councillor Barkley and his passion for drainage, because he's our go-to guy with the questions and keeps on top of everything. I just have a couple of questions, and I thank you for Councillor Barkley for clarifying inspection versus assessment. So my couple of questions. One is, if these assessments were very outdated, are there obviously some inspections that are also outdated if things weren't really looked at that often over the time, and that some drains got very outdated and more expensive maintenance and damage to agricultural land and possibly property would have occurred because of outdated maintenance and repairs? So are they outdated as well in inspections? I guess that would be for Mr. Sly.
It probably does mean the inspections are up to date. It doesn't necessarily, it's very dependent of the situation. It is very dependent on the situation. If some are, the assessment schedules are out to date on them, it doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't inspected, but the inspection is that, yeah, what Josh said is the physical in the field review of the drain, and the assessment schedules is the paper and the calculations that have been done. So you would think they would go hand in hand, but they don't necessarily always go hand in hand. So tying one to the other may not be, it may or may not be that situation. Like, I can't say one or the other for sure. So
okay, thank you. So if we have culverts heaving, for example, does that just happen fairly quickly, or would that be because there was an issue with drainage in a culvert that through regular inspections and therefore maintenance would have prevented the heaving, or can they just happen quickly?
Heaving can happen on any kind of road you would see in the wintertime. Culverts do heave, and they do settle back in once the frost is out of the ground. It's whether if they see the culverts heaving and they don't kind of settle back in the original position that they were. So water would be getting under the culvert and heaving it up, and then basically that would be causing a bit of a bridge that wouldn't allow the water, and the water would be building up on one side of the culvert, and would be impeding the flow of the water within that drain, as it is with a road culvert as well. That is, as you can see around the municipality, if that culvert needs repair and whatnot, that's the same kind of principle behind that. So
okay, so when there's a new assessment schedule set up, will there be also routine inspections set up?
That it can definitely be scheduled and assessed from a timing perspective with regards to staff. That is allocation of staff time to do that. It does take time, but that is something that can be dedicated to individuals to complete those inspections on a regular basis, whether it's yearly, 5-year rotation, or depending on how they want to set up the rotation with regards to the inspection. So it's variable, but it definitely can be set up to set up a schedule with regards to that. So
certainly, if problems are detected and acted on earlier, then it minimizes the risk to property and personal property and agricultural property, right?
Absolutely.
So my other question then is, what is the approximate number of property owners are on each of those drains, or do they completely vary? And the area that's covered by one drain, or is that also vary?
It varies quite significantly. Some drains could be less than 10 landowners. It could be hundreds and hundreds of landowners. It depends on the complexity of the drain and how large it is. Josh did touch on it, that some drains flow into other drains. So they kind of branch into other drains. So the catchment area is quite large. But yeah, drains come in any sizes, any lengths, depending on how it was engineered at the time. So.
Okay, thank you. And are there similar routine inspections done on municipal urban area, like stormwater drains and stormwater management drains and ponds?
Yes, we do. From the urban area, we do our inspections for stormwater management facilities. From a stormwater piping system within the urban area, we do closed circuit television, basically a cameraing of the pipes to see the condition of the pipes. We do that for both sanitary and storm. And we do that on a rotation as well, covering certain areas based on budgetary constraints for certain years, but we have a rotation. We do a rotation for that, try to do all the storm and sanitary within the urban area once every 5 years within Kemptville. So that's our schedule for that type of thing within the urban area. So.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you, and Josh, for your presentation. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan. Anybody else? Can we move on? Seeing none. Okay. I guess we have a motion for to approve a report from our staff, or recommendation, I guess. I got that correct, Ms. Babcock?
Yes, that's correct. It's a two-part motion. First, that council receive this presentation titled Drainage Engineering for information purposes, and to receive this report titled Agriculture Tile Drainage Record and Municipal Drain Update Strategy to allow council to make an informed decision during budget deliberations.
Okay, so it sounds like two motions then, right? You're splitting this?
It's singular. It's
is singular,
two
okay.
parts, yeah.
Okay, so I need somebody to motion this. Councillor Barkley, any seconder? Councillor Sarkian?
Yeah, and just a little clarification through you, Deputy Mayor, to the clerk. By accepting the report, we're tacitly agreeing with the recommendation, the staff recommendation for number 3. Is that correct?
The decision, sorry, Gary, Mr. Dyke wishes to speak.
If I might, through you, Your Worship, just for a clarity standpoint, if part of the motion is referred to the budget process, which as I heard it, then the final decision would not come until the budget was approved.
Okay, so a decision about which option we wanted to choose, or have a fourth different option is possible?
It would essentially come forward as a recommendation into the budget process, and then as the budget process is approved, then the final recommendation will be approved as part of the budget.
Sorry to belabor this point, but there's different figures attached to each of the 3 options.
And excuse me, through you, Deputy Mayor, and that would be part of the deliberation of council at budget time is allocating whatever funds to whatever option into the budget.
Okay, thank you. That's clear.
Anyone else have a question before we call? All in favor? So moved. Thank you. Ms. Babcock Cormier, we're on to consent agenda.
That's correct, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. I believe somebody wanted to pull something from this consent agenda, so I'll let Councillor Strachan speak on that.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was looking to have the Environmental Action Advisory Committee meeting minutes pulled from the agenda for a quick highlight and discussion later on, please.
Okay, Ms. Cormier, we just do I do a motion now to accept all the others as they're written? Okay, so I'll need okay, so I'll need somebody to motion that. Councillor Strachan, and seconded by Councillor O'Sullivan. All in favor? Great, so moved. Okay, so the next piece we have is under reports number J, I'm assuming. That's what I seen on my. I don't have our typical agenda. Just so everybody knows, I'm using the one on the website like everybody else because my iPad's not working, and the mayor asked me to step in last minute, so we're good. But anyways, my cable clerk's office is taking care of me nicely here. So who will be speaking to this particular report?
So this would be the report with respect to council vacancy interview questions, and that would be the Chief Administrative Officer.
Okay, Mr. Dyke, you can take it away.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. As council is aware, in the process to fill the vacancy that will be left by the departure of the deputy mayor, the bylaw requires that questions for the interviewer of the candidates be endorsed by resolution of council. Those questions have been put together through at the staff level and been put forward to council for approval tonight. And the questions are attached as Appendix A in the report. Did you want me to read the questions, Your Worship? Or Deputy Worship, excuse me.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So it'll, as set up in the bylaw, the interviews will be 30 minutes in length. As such, we thought it was important to lead to a maximum of 3 questions per candidate. And the questions would be as follows. What prompted you to apply to serve on council? What experiences from your personal and professional life do you see as strengths in shaping how you would approach serving on council? And the last question would be, what are the most important issues that North Grenville is facing?
Okay, thank you. Before we go to questions, I just wanted to explain too that this particular bylaw was developed by the previous council. So that was early on in their mandate, or they needed to deal with this on another issue. But anyways, and I'll let my council colleagues, and if they have any questions on the questions, please feel free. Councillor Barkley, go ahead.
I have no real question. I just appreciation for staff of doing their due diligence and looking at what other municipalities have included in this kind of interview process. And I have no objections or comments on the 3 questions.
Okay, it's Mr. Dyke. It's my understanding too that council and council colleagues will have an opportunity to ask candidates to expand on those particular questions, or maybe have their own question. Is that true, or how do we handle that?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So yes, under the process as defined by the bylaw, the questions to the candidates will be placed put to them by myself on behalf of council, and then council members will have an opportunity to offer follow-up questions or points of clarity of the candidates.
Very good. So these questions don't hamper us in our discussions. They're just really a conversation piece, so we can add to them. That's my understanding. Great.
Yes, it is. Again, they're set up in this fashion to ensure fairness and consistency amongst all the candidates during the interview process.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions from my council colleagues? Okay, so do we have a motion on the table for this one? I believe we do. Oh, do we have a question? Sorry. Okay. Councillor Barkley is motioning, and I think a seconder was Councillor O'Sullivan. Okay, all in favor? We're good. So moved. Okay, so we have nothing under finance, the office of the clerk. We're moving down. So public works, I believe, is up next. Item number 5.1. Is that correct?
Sorry, you actually, there's a report with respect to primary care, and it will be Ms. Chenot who presents that particular report.
Oh, sorry, I passed over that one. Sorry, Chenot. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good evening, Council. Tonight I will be providing a brief overview of the primary care landscape in North Grenville and some problems that residents have identified to us. I would also like to thank Frank Vasello, the Chief Executive Officer of the Kemptville District Hospital, for his help in preparing this report, and he's also joined us tonight as well. Next slide, please. According to the Canadian Institute for Health Information, there were 39 full-time physicians in North Grenville in 2019. A number of residents have notified us that their primary care physician has left the community. In some of these cases, patients have been moved to another part-time practitioner or are left unattended. Local medical clinics already had pre-existing wait lists, and these exits further compound the issue. Next slide, please. This chart illustrates the physician gaps at local clinics as well as their wait lists. A practice is allotted a number of physicians they are allowed to have, and these positions cannot be shifted to other clinics, even if they have resources to take on more physicians and patients. So that's what's reflected in the physician need column. Next slide, please. Many other communities across Canada and Ontario are facing similar issues. Communities can be designated a high needs area, which removes the cap on number of physicians and where they operate. Considerations for being designated an area of high need include a measure of community's rurality, the physician to population ratio, and other factors including demographics, socioeconomic status, and local health needs and access. And it's recently, this designation has been in the news because Collingwood recently received the designation. Nearby communities that are designated high needs areas include Augusta, Brockville, Merrickville, Wolford, Prescott, Rideau Lakes, and Westport. Communities often establish a committee to address the problems that they face. Such committees have a variety of purposes. They can focus on recruitment, getting designated a high needs area, or addressing other identified issues. Recruitment programs vary across communities as well. Some focus on establishing practicum programs to train and hopefully retain new graduates. Others provide financial incentives to attract practitioners. As a first step, staff recommend engaging with local stakeholders to further identify the healthcare problems in our community so we can identify a scope of work in order to address residents' needs. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions as best I can at this early stage, and Frank is here as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jean. Before we go to questions, I'm just wondering if our CEO of the hospital, Frank Zell, would like to expand on that a little bit or talk about it. I think you're muted, Frank. Still muted.
Here we go. Sorry about that, folks. I didn't see my button at all on the screen. I'm great now. First of all, I want to thank, as the hospital CEO, on behalf of our board, Her Worship Mayor Peckford, Mr. Gary Dyke, Hilary Janot, and all of the councillors and the team that works at the municipality for their initiative and taking this up upon receiving some of the news from the community. It's incredibly comforting and gratifying for a hospital CEO to have the entire community, especially the entire council, behind this initiative. This is not a hospital initiative alone. It's a community-wide initiative. So thank you for recognizing it, acknowledging it, and embracing the challenge. And we at the hospital, along with our primary care colleagues, will work with you folks and the resources at the ministry, primarily Health Force Ontario, to rectify this and basically work hard to get Campbell deemed an underserviced area so we can achieve those levels of resources we need in terms of primary care physicians. We have a need now. You folks, I'm not telling you something you don't know. You could probably lecture me on this for many hours, how the community is growing. And it's a very fluid environment, and we're going to have even more of a crunch if we don't prepare the foundation of primary care at this time. So you have our full support. Again, I salute you for taking this on, and please don't ever hesitate to reach out and leverage the resources that we have. And I think you're off to a great start. You've really nailed down the key points that need to be addressed. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Frank. Councillor Doreen Sullivan, you have a question? You're muted.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor, to Mr. Vasello and to Ms. Janot. I appreciate your preparation of that report and presentation. I do have a concern that you did not identify even recruiting nurse practitioners and having primary care offices that have registered nurses who work to full scope of practice. If you had more registered nurses and nurse practitioners, you could certainly have physicians who see more patients, take on more patients, because a lot of what the physicians do could be delegated under medical directives to nurses, registered nurses, who could take on a lot more than the physicians and free their time up to do things that only they can do. So I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't see anything about recruiting nurse practitioners and more registered nurses in primary care offices, because they have a lot to offer and they could really free up physicians' time. So I appreciate that. If that could be something that is addressed, maybe at the provincial level, that would be a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan. Any follow-up on that before we move on? Okay. CEO Kerry Dick, please.
Just quickly, the Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Sullivan's question, that those discussions have been had and they've been identified as one of the solutions or potential solutions to ease the burden on healthcare. The purpose of the report tonight was to introduce the program we're putting in place and not pre-identify any one route to go, but all avenues being put in place. And Mr. No, in their contact with Mr. Vasello and other colleagues in the area, I'm fully anticipating we will have a fulsome look at this issue and put together a really solid program going forward for the community.
Okay, thank you. Actually, George Brown College has a particular program now that is a postgraduate program for primary care nurses, and the role that they can play in primary care, which is your first point of contact. It keeps you healthy, and it also is the first identification of problems. So it's an important piece of healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan. Before I go to Councillor Strachan, I'm going to allow Mr. Vasello to follow up with this. I'm sure that you're going to be speaking to Councillor O'Sullivan's question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to echo what Gary was saying. He beat me to it. You're absolutely right. The way we're framing this, and I think the strategic high road play on this isn't a primary care physician strategy. It is a primary care strategy. So you're absolutely right, Doreen, that we have to take a look at what are some of the other components of primary care other than physicians that could be leveraged. As a matter of fact, I believe the ministry will ask the community to do exactly what Gary had indicated, go beyond the physician model we currently have, because the province has invested considerable resources, financial resources in training those folks, those primary care nurses. So I believe that has been discussed, as Gary mentioned, prior to tonight, and I fully expect those conversations to only be enhanced going forward.
Thanks very much. As you probably know, I work at the academic family health team at the Ottawa Hospital, and it's just incredible how much more a nurse can do when they're working to fuller scope of practice. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen so much here in Kemptville or in a lot of other areas. But unless you go really north, then all of a sudden nurses can work full scope. Thank you.
Very true. Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan, and thank you, Mr. Vasello. Councillor Strachan, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I like the conversation about the nurse practitioner and about the fulsome approach to recruiting and increasing the numbers for medical care. Certainly, I've benefited from being under the care of nurse practitioner, and I think it's probably some of the best medical care actually I've received. So I would be very happy to see that and see what kind of combination we can recruit here to alleviate the current pressures. We did attend Roma, the conference not too long ago, and I know that the mayor had a chance to get the ear of the health minister of Christine Elliott, and did mention our high need situation and our current situation with a lack of primary care providers in our area. And one of the issues, or one of the concerns that came up, was that we did have a status as a high needs community at one point, and at some point we lost it. And nowhere through the discussions and the follow-on did we really get a sense of why that was the case. And so it's, I guess there's a question, I'm sort of putting it out there. I don't know if Frank, Mr. Vasello, if you have any insight into that, or the CAO, but it's certainly a question on our minds as to why that status was removed in the first place.
Yes, that's a great question. And through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, if I could address it. The numbers that were presented to the ministry by the former Champlain LHIN were erroneous. We brought that forward to the LHIN as they were being dissolved and absorbed into Ontario Health, and they were going to be working with the ministry to rectify those numbers. The numbers were not reflecting growth, not only in Ottawa, but in the southern tier of the Lynn right down to Prescott. And I believe the southern tier is the area that is definitely in need of physicians. So my suggestion at the time was to stratify the status rating. If Ottawa proper is not underserviced, we shouldn't suffer because of that change in status. The status below, let's say Barhaven or even the northern aspects of Manotick are definitely underserviced, and we need to work with Ontario Health now that the LHINs are no longer in business to bring that case forward. So there is an opportunity to leverage some of the errors of their ways before. So we're not starting from scratch. I think we definitely have some momentum, a little bit, but at least we have some momentum.
Thank you. I know that Ms. Janot wants to add to this. I was just going to say, I mean, obviously, if there's a small error made early on, or there's an representation early on, and then we have a very high growth community that's happened very quickly, I think it sort of exacerbates the situation. So I think we can understand how that could have gone over time. But it's good to hear that there's some plan in place and work happening on various fronts to rectify that. So thank you very much for that answer.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Mr. Janot, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just that I was on the phone today with our regional advisor from Health Force. So that's the organization that Frank mentioned earlier. They're the ones who help with recruitment of physicians. And I asked her about that. She's only been in the role for a year, so she didn't have any information on hand, but she was going to look into it and see if we had status, why we lost status. So we should have that information soon.
So more information on that question to follow. Okay, great. Any other questions from staff and or from council colleagues? Councillor Barkley?
Yeah, I just have a question because it seems there be an urgent need, and this is through you, Deputy Mayor, to Hillary Janot. What's the timeline in terms of coming back to council with a report and a suggestion about a course of action? And I'm curious also to know what actions may be hard to predict at this point in time, but what kind of actions can council or the municipality do in order to alleviate the situation?
Thank you, Councillor Barkley, and through you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just pulling up. So I'm expecting we can hopefully have something in front of council in April if our timeline holds and we're able to get all the stakeholders together in a timely manner. And our representative from Health Force did recommend today as well that anyone who is in current need and they're an unattached patient, so they're looking for a family physician, they should be going to Health Connects. And Frank, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, is it Health Connects Ontario? And that's where they register, and that's where all the data is, the official data is pulled on wait lists and the current number of unattached patients. So, and we do have some messaging that we can share with the community following this presentation for those who have lost their doctor recently.
Any follow-up, Councillor Barkley?
No, that's good. I look forward to that report, hopefully in April. I understand it might take longer. And in the meantime, I mean, is there something that council can do in terms of writing a letter or reaching out to our MPP just to alert them to the fact that we are not a high needs area, or has that been done already?
It hasn't been done yet. I think our first step as staff will be collecting and getting together with our stakeholders to better understand the problem. Is it an issue specifically with recruitment? Are we having trouble recruiting, or do we just need more support in the recruiting?
Mr. Dyke, go ahead.
Just to add to Ms. Janot's comments, and answer Councillor Barkley. Yeah, so the mayor and I did have a conversation with Minister Clark with respect to this, as well as Councillor Strachan did note at a Roma conference. We made Minister Elliott aware of the current situation, and again, just to build on Ms. Janot's pieces, we're trying to build a program together so we really, when we're going forward in lobbying, and we're doing it in a fashion that is addressing the actual need we have in our community to ensure that there's sustainability behind it. And so we're really happy with where we're going and the support we've gotten from KDH as well as the province, and I can't say enough, the talent Collingwood. They put us in touch with their team down there that have reached out to Mission already. So we're moving forward quickly as quickly as we can, but also we want to create a sustainable plan that serves needs of the community well into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Dyke. Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Do you have exit interviews, or does any of the clinics or the clinic leads do exit interviews when physicians decide to leave leave North Grenville and move their practice somewhere else? So we can gather the reasons why they do leave. And there was another question, but anyway, that one for now.
Mr. Fazella, I'll let you answer that question. It looks like you're interested in it.
Yes, thank you very much. And Hillary might have some intel as well to share. Yes, all of the physician vacancies, the reasons why the physicians have left are very well known, whether they're due to retirement or just interest in moving their practice elsewhere. So there's really no unanswered questions, but there is, I'm not sure if it's a formal exit interview process, but the practices are very small. They know each of the physicians intimately. They know exactly what's happening. And these aren't all of a sudden decisions. These things progress over a period of months, if not years. And we need to, I believe that is, and this, I'll stop at this last comment. I think this is where we need to get to, a very proactive strategic approach about who's leaving, who's planning to leave. So if there's going to be a larger, cadre of people working on it, the hospital and council and Health Force Ontario in partnership, then we can get a head start and we can get a lot of homework done. So I think the practices will embrace that and they want to work with us on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One last question, sorry. When you said 39, I guess it was to Hillary, 39 full-time physicians, there are a lot of primary care physicians now in Kempo who are working part-time. It just suits them. There's a lot of women now in primary care and they job share in a sense and, have a little more work-life balance. So what is the number of nurses or number of physicians here now? Primary care, it's more than 39, I assume, but do you count 39 FTEs or 39 physicians?
Correct. So it should be stated it's 39 FTEs. I don't have the breakdown in front of me of the part-time numbers.
Okay.
And that data point I will highlight as well is actually a data point that came to us through our WCCD ISO partnership. And how that data is gathered is based on where a physician's most payments are processed. Otherwise, Health Force, who I was talking to today, theirs is based on where a physician identifies their primary location for providing care. So there's two different methods that I've seen so far on how they count where someone is practicing. So we'll definitely have to nail or dive into that a bit more.
Yes, because I know some of the physicians actually work both here and at a clinic in Ottawa. And the same goes for where I work too, that physicians don't all just work in the family health team, but there is a clinic in Smith Falls that is run by a nurse practitioner, and all of the other professionals in that office are RNs. So that would be an excellent model to have here too. Anyway, lots of options. We just need to put them in play.
Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan. Mr. Fasella, if you want to add to that, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add one comment. Councillor O'Sullivan, you hit the nail right on the head. I should be part of our business case, if you will, going forward to get the region deemed underserviced. The ratios that we had 20, 30 years ago were based on male physicians working incredibly long hours, and those male physicians had tremendously large rosters of patients. Wasn't unheard of at the time to have over 3,000 patients. physicians that want to strike a good work-life balance, whether they be female, male physicians or otherwise, are hovering around 11 to 1,200 patients. Some is even as low as 1,000. So, based on that and the notion of working part-time would lead you to believe we need more people, more bodies, right? So those old ratios really don't compute in today's world. And that should be, and I believe it would be part of any business case going forward to really, push the recruitment effort forward.
Absolutely. I'm sure you have stats too from KDH on the number of visits to emergency that occur simply because patients have nowhere else to go. I mean, it's something that could very well and should very well have been taken care of by the primary care provider. And they end up going to emergency because they have nowhere else to go. So, I mean, that would really support a business case to improve primary care resources.
Absolutely, Councillor Sullivan. Through you, Deputy Mayor, if I might comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. There's two factors there very briefly about those emerge patients. Some consider them orphan patients, meaning they don't have a physician, but there's two things. Either they don't have a physician or they don't have access to physicians, right? So some of them, not all primary care physicians have evening hours. They're required to have evening hours a few times a week. Not all do, and I believe we're going to have to demonstrate that our physicians are putting those evening hour shifts in place. If they're not, then the ministry will ask us to work with the physicians to get those evening hours, going.
Yeah, there's financial benefits for them if they put in evening hours, but they will sometimes put those evening hours at a time that's not really suitable for the patients. So there's ways around, unfortunately. But the good old doctors are, they're different. I mean, everybody's different. And like you said, working crazy hours wasn't good balance. And everybody's seeking that. So I think we need to look at it.
Okay. I just want to back up a little bit with Mr. Fusella, what you said. I mean, this is early on. You said that this effort is definitely between the hospital as a partnership, the municipality, and of course, council and or a councillor who may sit at the table to help represent the rest of council. So I think staff should consider that anyways, and we can talk about that at another date, but at least so we can keep our finger on what's happening as well, and to help politically push us if we have to. Any other questions with staff and or council colleagues? No? Okay. So we have a motion, Ms. Babcock, to accept. Where am I here? Okay, so we're going to accept this up now. Can I ask to just briefly with staff, when would council get another update? Is there a planned date for that?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So we can provide an update in the interim, but I am hoping if everything goes well, we can present a plan for moving forward in early April. Okay, great. That sounds good. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. I need somebody to step up with that one. Councillor Barkley, and seconder, Councillor O'Sullivan. Okay, any other comments or questions? I see none. All in favor? Councillor O'Sullivan? Okay, it looks like everybody. Thank you. Okay, so the next item of business we have, we talked about I believe the Public Works 5.1, Ms. Babcock, we've covered that. Is that correct? We're going to 5.2?
That's correct, Deputy Mayor. And 5.2 is actually a consent agenda item. So we're heading over to Parks, Recreation and Culture's report.
Okay, 6.1. Okay, I got it here. Okay. And who will be presenting for this?
That's Director Guy.
Okay, Mr. Guy, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. So I'm here tonight to present two draft policies. Number one, the arts and culture policy, and number two, theater allocation policy. Next slide, please. Both policies were key recommendations from the 2020 Parks and Recreation and Culture Master Plan. Staff worked cooperatively with the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee to develop both policies. And I do want to praise the work of the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee. I believe our chair, Jane Couch, is here this evening. They were very instrumental in getting these policies to the council table this evening. And we did pass the committee passed a motion at the January 18th Arts and Culture meeting to recommend these policies to council. We also sent the draft policies out to key stakeholders in the community and also the general public, and they were provided an opportunity to comment on both draft policies. Next slide, please. So the benefits of the arts and culture policies provides a framework for planning and investment in arts and culture in North Grenville, recognize and strengthen the municipality's active role in fostering community partnerships with local businesses, volunteer groups, and neighborhood associations that run theater productions, festivals, special events, and more. Next slide, please. The theater allocation policy benefits ensures equitable use and clarity of terms and conditions for renting the Urbandale Arts Center, ensures that access to municipal spaces is fairly and equitably addressed for all users with an emphasis on youth, nonprofit organization, and local groups. And that is the presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guy. Does any questions from my council colleagues? Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Director Guy. I don't have any questions, but I do want to comment on the extensive input that members of the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee did. A lot of work, a lot of very thorough discussion went on about these policies, and there was input from a lot of the disciplines in the arts, and lots of good work went in, and I think they're the fruits of their labor. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask them if they're interested in speaking in a minute. I'll just go through the questions first. We may have more questions after their presentation or piece as well. Councillor Barkley.
I just want to echo what Councillor O'Sullivan mentioned about the hard work that both staff and members of the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, which Councillor O'Sullivan and myself both sit on. So we were witness to the number of hours and smart thinking that went into both of these two policies. And it was very timely that Parks Rec and Culture Master Plan was part of the recommendations was for us to come up with this. And back 3.5 years ago, we formed for the first time an Arts and Culture Advisory Committee. And so it was perfect timing. They dug their heels in and really worked hard to come up with something that was really a made in North Grenville kind of policy for, in particular, the theater allocation policy. I mean, we had people who were primary renters of that theater weighing in on it. And I think we ended up with two very productive policies and I think they'll serve the community really well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barkley. I don't know if our guests would like to speak, but I know Jane and Barb, I believe, are on the call. And I know, Jane, you cornered me, I think, when I first got elected, and you handed a piece of newspaper with my highlighted comment that I made about arts and culture. So I hope we're doing it justice, even though we've gone through some hiccups. I'll let you take it away. Thanks.
My apologies for the entertaining picture behind me. I just like the sweater. That's my granddaughter. I didn't want to say anything. I just wanted to listen, but I just have to say thank you very much. Everything you've said is very generous, and it's been an uphill battle just because the whole process is something that's very foreign to all of us as a group, and your support and just your patience So thanks. And, we'll get the other two done, and I'm going to go now. Bye.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank
Is there
you.
any other questions on this topic? The motion we have is to accept the arts and culture policy and approve the theater allocation policy for the Urban Arts Center. I'll need a mover if we don't have any other questions. Councillor O'Sullivan, second by Councillor Barkley. No questions, comments, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, I meant to back up since the staff's still on here. It was about the, I meant to make a comment about the physician piece that we just spoke to about, or the medical care anyways. That came up, I believe, I don't know if it was initially through the mayor, but I think it was, that she got some contacts and people concerned about losing physicians. And she brought that, or we brought that to staff. And I want to compliment staff for taking it so quickly and getting this in front of us and just getting that report done so fast. I was very impressed, by the way. Thank you very much for doing that, all involved. Okay, next we have Ms. Babcock Cormier. I believe we've got a piece that Councillor Strachan wanted to pull. Is that I'm in the right position?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That would be K.1.2, which is the Environmental Action Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Those were removed from the consent agenda.
Okay, so Councillor Strachan, you want to discuss those or comment on it? Thank you.
Yes, please, Deputy Mayor. So I just was asking to have this particular item removed from the consent agenda so that we could highlight a few things. So for those who may not be aware, the Environmental Action Advisory Committee is sort of a new version of previous environmental committees that have been in place. However, there was a gap. And so we felt that there was a need to help address some of the questions and concerns from residents to make progress on various environmentally focused initiatives. And it's been quite wide ranging. I think Director Dunlop and Mr. Shipman will attest to the fact that there's been a lot of discussions on a lot of different topics, but they've supported us very well. In these particular minutes, one of the item that I would like to highlight is one that's been on the agenda for quite some time. I think as with many things, COVID interrupted our train of thought and our progress on this particular one, but we've picked up steam recently on it, and that is the Blue Communities initiative. And that was brought forward by resident Jean Lambert to highlight the importance of recognizing water as a human right, and thereby ensuring that there's safe access to safe and clean water for all residents. And so that's sort of the highlights of that particular initiative. And so at this stage, I believe we've gone through the committee, and it's been approved as far as the wording goes as to what is coming towards to council. And there's a report that we'll be expecting from Public Works sometime soon in order to bring this before council and hopefully successfully pass it, if I can put my little 2 cents in there. I think it's a worthy initiative, and hopefully will give folks a lot to think about as to what North Grenville is doing when it comes to safe and clean drinking water access. So that's all I wanted to highlight in this one. I guess I do have a question for Director Dunlop. If she knows when this will be, through you, Deputy Mayor, if she knows when this will be coming to council.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. This item was referred by the Director of Legislative Services and will be filtering once more through the SMT, and we do hope to have it back in front of the Environmental Action Committee and to Council in March or April, I believe was the schedule.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sarkisian. I don't have a lot of comments on that, but I do have, let's just say one, since I'm not going to be here to vote on anything like that. I like I read it, Jean called me, I spoke about it. I think it's missing some items I didn't, or some things were there I didn't agree with, but again, I won't be for long, but I'm a let's make it North Grenville item, but made North Grenville. I get the blue piece and all that, but I think we can do better with a policy that would work better for our municipality, and have the same impact locally. But I think it can go a little further. So that's just a comment. I don't want to get into the weeds with it because you guys will be doing that in the future, and it'll be up to you. But Councillor Strachan, I know you want to say something. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't want to debate this tonight because that wasn't the intent of bringing this up. I just wanted to highlight it for anybody who is paying attention to some of our efforts at the Environmental Action Committee, is that with respect to this particular initiative, there is it is somewhat constrained in the intent behind it to become a blue communities to be recognized as such. And we have tried to, in the latest version, to make sure that there is a North Grenville flavor to it to capture exactly what we are able to do here. And, it isn't intended to be binding as far as a law in real sense. It does connect to bylaws, bylaw in particular. However, I think it's to try and just capture the sentiment behind where we recognize the importance of water. So there'll be lots more discussion to follow on this, not with you, Deputy Mayor, but with the rest of council. And I think there's lots of opportunity for this, but I think heart's in the right place when it comes to this one. So thank you.
Well, I think I can follow along and poke at you, I guess. Anyways, Councillor Barkley, you've got a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I take your admonition not to get into the weeds, and I won't, because I certainly did at the Environmental Action Committee, and there was lots of back and forth, and I had particular trouble with one small aspect of the Blue Community pledge, as it were. But you'll notice from the minutes, I ended up moving the resolution that hopefully will come to council, and was seconded by Fred Schuler. So certainly what's coming to council in the form of that resolution has been very well discussed, as Councillor Strachan will attest.
Good.
Thanks.
This was obviously a good one to pull from the consent agenda. Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Okay, we are, I believe, getting close to the end of the meeting here. I'm at other business. Is that correct, Ms. Cormier?
If I may, Deputy Mayor,
Yep.
I just need the motion with respect to the Environmental Action Advisory Committee meeting minutes being received by council.
Okay, yes, I didn't do that on purpose, Councillor Strachan. So I will need a motion for that. Councillor Strachan first, and second, Councillor Barkley. All in favor? Great, thank you very much. So now I'm on to other business. Is there any other business? I don't see any. No. Notice of motions. My council colleagues, do you have something that you would like to surprise us with? No. Okay. What's next, Ms. Cormier?
There were no bylaws for consideration for this evening, so the next item is period of questions from the public and media relating to agenda items. I can confirm that I've received no questions from the public or the media with respect to any of the items on this evening's agenda.
Okay, I'll ask. I don't know. I see one public, maybe. So is there any questions from the public and or media? Debbie wants to comment, I think. No? Okay. Welcome back, Debbie. Okay, next, Ms. Cormier, what have we got here? Just closing the meeting, I guess.
Yes,
So
please.
okay, so I'll need someone to motion that. Councillor Strachan, followed by Councillor O'Sullivan. All in favor? Great, so moved. So that's the end of our meeting, I believe, unless I've got something else. It's Ms. Cormier.
Your motion to adjourn.
And a motion to adjourn, yes. And I'll need somebody for that. Councillor Barkley. And a seconder, Councillor Strachan. All in favor? The meeting is ended at 8:09. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for putting up with my
Great job. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.